Wright. My major is studio art with a minor in animation. Before we start, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I know it's early, but I hope it's going to be fun. I brought some stuff, and I think it's going to be interactive a little bit. So the project that I did is called Green Light. So I wanted to do something that impacted independent filmmaking's effect on the creative process. So for this, I created a proof of concept animation short film in the form of a trailer. Okay, so I know that's a lot of words. I'll break it down a little bit. So first of all, independent film. So if you don't know, independent film is like a type of film that's not produced by big companies, right? Doesn't have a big budget, not ran by a Hollywood studio. It's made by usually individual creatives who put the money together themselves in a small group of people. And then the proof of concept is a scene or a sequence from a screenplay that you make before you commit to the whole film to see if the work applies in the way that you want it to. So for this, I made it in trailer format. So my proof of concept is in trailer format for the screenplay Green Light. Okay. So before we get into everything, I'm just going to tell you what we're going to cover first a little bit. So my entire project is based in the phases of production of film, which is pre-production, production, and post-production. So everything that comes before I shoot, everything that happens while I'm animating and shooting, and everything that happens after to create a complete product. I also wanted to mention before we get started what my intent was with this and what I wanted to kind of learn from it. The two main things are independence and resources. As you all know, I have a strong connection with film in my life and my family, and with this project I wanted to experiment with complete creative control. So I have very little input from actual film professors or other professionals, and most of my input comes from my peers, and of that I hopefully asked very little. I tried to do it as much on my own as possible. The other thing is resources. Luckily, I go to school here and they provide me with wonderful resources in the film studio, so I was allowed to use the animation program and the editing lab to do everything. But everything else I had to do on my own. As you can see up here, I spent a lot of time building things and creating things within the pre-production process. So before, I'm going to show the film next, and the reason I'm showing the film next is because I want you to be able to refer back as I'm going through things to what I've done before to see how I got there. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the film too. So Green Light is set in 1890s New England, where Jonathan, our protagonist, is recently widowed and going to stay in this lighthouse as a temporary keep until they find a permanent one. There's a few other characters like Bo, who is there to show him along the way a little bit, and Morana the cat, which you see a little bit of. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna play it for you. started with pre-production. Hold on. Okay. Let's get started with pre-production. So pre-production is the biggest phase of this. This is what took me the longest time. I will admit there were times where I was in production and still trying to finish pre-production. It is a very intensive process. But I'm going to try to narrow it down and squeeze it together for you. So first of all, you get a script, you read the script, and then you make storyboards. That's the first part. The storyboards are there to help you visualize, and you use them throughout the rest of your piece to see, like, at times I was using it to be like, okay, what angles of this do I see, and what do I need to create that fits that angle? And in the editing process, what sequences did I put things together? So that's the first part that's very important. And then researching and compiling references and historical images and all of that stuff. And it all goes into this wonderful thing called the deck. The deck is a Google document that, I have a clip of it in the next thing, but not full, but it's a Google document that is the basis of production, and underneath each has things like script, storyboards, inspirations, character designs, set designs. Every single thing that I made had a picture and was put into the deck to help me organize throughout the entire process. Without it, I think I would be a mess. So I thought I'd mention that because even though you're not going to see a lot of the deck, it is something that was used throughout the entire process. Up there is a little clip of one of our first storyboards. Okay, I wanted to start with the visual inspiration of the animation. Now, because this has no dialogue, which was an intentional choice, the script does have dialogue, I knew that my atmosphere and tone needed to be set right away. Because these things impact the overall emotion within it, along with the music, but it cannot only be the music. So up above you can see some of my original color scheme ideas, atmosphere ideas of what I was kind of visualizing in my mind versus the product down below. I think I stayed pretty much on track. And then I also wanted to say, as we start to move into talking about animation a little bit, there was also the decision of 2D and 3D. I knew that I wanted to have a space that had depth, so 3D was already in there. But creating characters that move and interact in a 3D space is extremely more time-consuming than doing a 2D animation. So through that, I had to work a lot in post-production and green screens, which you will see more of. But every choice is extremely intentional because it affects the end product. So here are some of my character designs. They're straight out of my notebook, and then underneath, so I did have to do a little historical research. Luckily, this is my fourth film doing historical research for, so that was not super difficult. But there's lots more images, but these are kind of the direct things underneath. I tried to keep certain tones of the characters within their drawings, like Jonathan is tired and on edge and has a blank stare. And Bo's a little softer, but he's still a hardy workman. And Layla is Jonathan's wife, which you see images of at times, like here, some of my prompts I have. And I had to build all these. So I will be passing these around for you to look at while I explain whatever this. I'll just give you half of them, and I'll give you half of them, and you will pass them. So what you're holding now are my puppets. There are only some of them. Each puppet is comprised of 12 to 16 pieces, and there's at least 4 puppets for each character, which it took me a while to figure out how I was going to do it. So if you look on the back of these, you'll notice that they're all made out of soda can cardboard. So what I did was I drew 3 versions of every character, copied them in the printer, and then cut them all out into pieces, glued them on, cut them out again, and then assembled them. And they're assembled in specific orders, so you don't see the joints and things like that. And then I also wanted to talk about some of the smaller props. We have these lovely hands that I have made. So you see these repeated over and over again. The way I was able to swap images in and out is the false stop, which I think is kind of neat. I'll show that. But that is also all drawn and copied and pasted. Same thing with the fire at the end. I cut out every single individual thing. Okay, sets. So here are some of the original concept art I did for this. So this is one of the first maps of this set, and that is the first rendition of the drawing. Now up there you can see that that is a Fresnel artolith from 1823. Now the one that I made is actually from, I think, 1890 or 1892, something like that. Tried to be really similar, tried to be, you know, but there's always a little you have to give when you're creating completely from scratch. And then here's some of the process of building the set. So as you can see, all of these tiles were hand painted, hand cut. Pretty much everything is made out of popsicle sticks and cardboard, which is really fun. And I spent a lot of time cutting them out. So I should covering everything. Yes, but every single thing that you see is handmade, which is why we're still in pre-production, why we're still talking about pre-production and how we got there. But we're now moving to production. So, animation. Animation is a funny thing. I don't know if you all know how it works, you know, picture frame by frame by frame by frame. So the animation process I used for this is, or the program I should say, is Dragon Frame, which is a stop motion program made specifically to do stop motion animation. And it makes it really easy because every time you hit the button, it takes one picture and you are in control of the frame. So you connect a camera to the computer, it gives you a live view, and you take individual photos as you do this, which you will see a little bit of what the program of Dragon Frame looks like later. But animating an image, or like image by image by image, was not the only thing I had to do. I also had to reference. I have this funny little side-by-side comparison for you of the things I was doing as I was animating to, yeah, hopefully help me track and move in the way. Sorry, what's my train of thought? I didn't cover animation a lot because even though it takes a long time, once you learn the program, it tends to be very straightforward. Because everything that I cover in pre-production leads to animation, so that's why they talk so much about that. And then we get to post. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the green screens and layering animation and color and music and things like that. So what you are looking at here is Premiere Pro. And this is kind of where my final edit is. And I'm going to explain to you how the green screens overlap a little bit. So we have, on the base here are all pictures of the sets. And then this second layer here is, especially through here, is Jonathan. And he has what is called a key on him, which is an effect that you apply that lets you choose a color. In this case, it was green. It erases the background, you go through and adjust it. So that you can layer images on top of each other. And it's the same thing for the cat. The cat is the next line up and also has that. And on top of it, I applied color to everything. And then down here you can see my music. It's really nice. So, oh, I almost forgot. If you were wondering what the setup was like, so I used a down shooter with a GH5 camera. So there's a GH5 camera is a little tiny, small body camera that can be used for photography or cinema. And I attached it to a down shooter. So I had a green screen table. And a down shooter is a stand that lets the camera point down. It faces straight down at it, and that's how I did a lot of the green screen animation through there. So, let me see. And then, okay, so I know I went through everything really fast. And there's a lot that goes to this, and I had to kind of sum things up. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens after, right? First of all, I want to talk about time. I think within my conclusion, the biggest thing that affects this is time. Animation, especially of this sort, is not usually done by oneself, right? Animation is usually done by a team of people with a budget, with a set time, and I didn't really have any of those. I had 2 semesters and a dream. And, and I think that, let me flip this over. I think that not only my own personal schedule affected it, but also the resources I had to, like resources of that time, right? Because I have to make sure I have everything built on time and keep myself on progress. But you know, when you spend over, I don't know, I probably spent 50 hours working on and building these puppets and these sets and things, you get to a certain point, you're like, am I ever going to get to production? And you're like, okay, but I have to keep on track while you're balancing everything else. And and then I also wanted to talk about independence a little bit within time, but also just within the project. Now, as I stated before, I tried to do this almost completely by myself. There were times I did ask for help, I will admit, but it was hopefully very limited. I think that it is very important to have peer review. I think it is very important to be able to see other perspectives than your own, and I do think that impacted my film. But I do not regret having complete creative control, because I've never directed on my own before, or directed in general. I've never produced on my own. I've animated, but not to this scale, and I love being able to explore the actual amount of work that goes into everything, but at the same time, I do think that peer review could push me further, right? I think one of the biggest things I've learned from this, besides how much of an investment this kind of process is how important your peers are, and how important the industry is when you're talking to other filmmakers and you're learning from other creatives, and you're I think that's it. Okay. Do you guys have questions?